A new piece out for the New York Times, David, titled "To Save Conservatism from Itself, I Am Voting for Harris." In it, David writes this: while there are voters who are experiencing a degree of Trump nostalgia, remembering American life pre-COVID as a time of full employment and low inflation, there is a different and darker story to tell about Trump's first term. Our social fabric frayed. It's not just that abortions increased, the murder rates skyrocketed, drug overdose deaths hit new highs, marriage rates fell, and birth rates continued their long decline. Americans ended his term more divided than when it began. I'm often asked by Trump voters, David writes, if I'm still conservative, and I respond that I can't vote for Trump precisely because I am conservative. The only real hope for restoring a conservatism that values integrity, demonstrates real compassion, and defends our foundational constitutional principles isn't to try to make the best of Trump, a man who values only himself. If he wins again, it will validate his cruelty and his ideological transformation of the Republican Party. If Harris wins, the West will still stand against Vladimir Putin, and conservative Americans will have a chance to build something decent from the ruins of a party that was once a force for genuine good in American life. David, let you expand a little bit on that. This is something Joe talks about all the time. I'm still conservative. You guys were just talking about this standing right here. It's the party, the Trumpists, that have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that the party's changed, but things have changed. So in 2016 and 2020, I voted third party. I wrote in. I could not vote for the Democrat. I definitely was not going to vote for Donald Trump. But there are some things that have changed since 2020. One of them was January 6th, which illustrated the lengths that Donald Trump would go, the destructive links to our own constitutional order that Donald Trump would go. And then the next year, when Russia invades Ukraine, you see the incredible stakes for the international order, for American national security. And on both of those just paramount issues, Trump is not just on the wrong side in many ways, especially here domestically, he's the instigator of the crisis itself. And so if you're dealing with changed events, I feel like it's incumbent on me to be open to changing my mind on at least one element of my stand, and that is, in this case, to vote for the party that at the very least is going to stand against Russian aggression. And Joe, saying that out loud, that I'm voting against a Republican to make sure that the United States resists Russian aggression is, again, one of those moments where you can't believe how much things have changed.
No, it's a surreal moment. And, I have explained to people before, I explained, Caddy, when Donald Trump was president, that I've always had great faith in America, and many people say, and they do. Many people say that I'm too optimistic. It's too glass half full. But my feeling has always been that Madisonian democracy rounds off the sharp edges. That's why I said when Donald Trump was president, and people come up to me and go, "Oh, this is all about." Ideology. I said, no, you don't understand. I said it's about respecting constitutional boundaries. I'm fairly confident that everybody from Mike Pence to Bernie Sanders would respect constitutional boundaries. And if Mike Pence were president or Bernie Sanders were president, I'd worry much less than if Donald Trump were president, because, again, Madisonian democracy, checks and balances, a separation of powers, that rounds off the sharp edges. We could survive 4 years of somebody who's very conservative or very liberal. Our problem here is someone who just doesn't respect constitutional boundaries and brags about being authoritarian to his supporters. And the truth is, I agree with David. There are a lot of people who think that this is like Clinton versus Dole in 1996. But there are quite a few Republicans I've talked to that like the authoritarian streak in Donald Trump. They like the strongman approach.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Pence put his own life in danger. He put his family's life in danger in order to protect and defend the bounds of constitutional democracy. It's night and day from the former president, who is now running again, telling Christian conservatives, don't worry, you won't have to vote again in 4 years' time because I'll have it all fixed. And who knows? You know, Donald Trump says stuff that is random and makes no sense, and maybe it was just another thing he says that's random and makes no sense. But it's pretty striking when you have a candidate running for president of the United States who is telling his supporters, who is telling American voters, you will not have to vote again in 4 years' time. The implication being that there will not be an election in 4 years' time. Now, I'm one of those people who thinks that the American guardrails hold and that the courts are strong and the press is strong and that there will be an election in 2028. And there are an awful lot of Democrats who believe that there will be an election in 2028 because they want to run in 2028. But it is very different, and it's really all about Donald Trump. David, when you look at Kamala Harris's record as a conservative, and I know you've got probably fellow conservatives who are voting for her, and I know people in the conservative wing of the Republican Party who have endorsed her, and you look at her record on things like immigration or as a prosecutor in San Francisco, or what she has said about a single-payer health system, or what she has said about ending fracking in Pennsylvania, and I know she's reversed some of that, but they seem to be reflections of her liberalism. Is it hard for you to say that you're going to vote for her?
Yeah, it is, actually. I'm a little bit encouraged that in many ways she's moving closer to me, you know, disclaiming the defund the police stuff and the fracking bans, endorsing the border bill, for example. So in some concrete ways, she is moving more to the middle, and that is somewhat reassuring. But yeah, at the end of the day, if she wins the presidency, there are a lot of policy issues that we would disagree on, a lot of policy issues. There are some we'd agree on, such as support for Ukraine. But we can have, as Joe was just saying, we can have that conversation, and there are other elections I can vote in, like for Senate or for House, that can blunt the effect of her more left-wing policies. But we're doing it within the norms of American democracy, within the rules of American democracy. And then in the next election, if she's gone too far, I'll vote a different direction. But we can't treat this. This is a core element of my piece. We cannot treat this like a regular election where some of the regular policy issues dictate our vote. There are other front-line, top-tier issues like respect for American democracy, defending and maintaining American allies that are just at this very high level, and we can't pretend they're not there.
As David lays out in the piece, the Republican Party now unrecognizable from what it was just a few decades ago in terms of both foreign policy and some matters here at home. But Willie, the great question, the unanswerable question is, what happens next? Even if Donald Trump were to be defeated this fall, does that mean Trumpism? Does that mean the MAGA movement goes away? There are certainly some in the Republican Party who say, yes, we'll be finally rid of him. Let's move on. We'll rebirth this party into something new for 2028. I don't know there's a guarantee of that. He is still going to be the loudest voice in the party, most likely. Certainly his running mate is set up to be a loud voice in his party going forward. The MAGA movement has captured so many state, local officials, state houses, Congress, the House of House of Representatives in particular. I don't know that even if Trump were to be defeated in November, that this would be suddenly the party would be able to rid itself of this movement. This is the party right now, the MAGA movement. And it might look a little different. It might have a different name atop of it in 2028. But I don't know that we could just take as faith that it'll go back to what it was.
Yeah, with tens of millions of regular supporters as well on board. As long as we're inside the editorial pages, the Wall Street Journal, Jerry Baker writing this morning, Trump is looking like a loser again, talking about the press conference last week that he calls false, obtuse, and lunatic. We're going to get into more of that from the Wall Street Journal in just a moment. Still